All right, in this video, we're going to talk about how we can create this pastel look right here. We had a user submit some footage and they wanted to transform their footage into this right here. So we have a lot of this vibrant greens, kind of have some really soft skin tones, but also very dense where we have a lot of saturation in it. Everything's kind of really popping. You can see a little bit more of the orange skin tone. And we have some really nice cyan colors. So we're going to talk about how we can go ahead and take their footage and transform it to look a lot closer to that pastel look that we're going for. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right. So here we have in this clip, this is all filmed in S-Log3. And we're going to go ahead and first transform that footage. So usually I would do this on a individual shot, or I would add all the clips to a group that were filmed with the same camera and then put the same base LUT on it. But in this case, because these were all the same, I can put that in the timeline, but I'm going to go ahead and right click and go to groups. And I'm going to go ahead and add into a new group. I'm just going to call this one S-Log3. If I had drone footage, I would make a D-Log1, and then it's an easier way to kind of grade that. So here we have these new viewers right here that we can go ahead and look at. So I have a group post clip, we have our clip, and then the group pre-clip. So what I like to do is usually in the group post clip is go ahead and add our base LUT. That way, anytime we need to do any adjustment before that, we can do that on the clip level. So we're going to go to Base LUTs 2.0, Sony, and then let's just use the FX3 S-Log3 Direct 7 and 9. So this is converted the footage. We can also look at this spectrum right here on this RGB parade, that it's sitting a lot higher in the scopes, which means it was kind of overexposed a little bit. So we're going to need to go ahead and correct this shot first. So since we put this in the group post clip, we can come over to the clip level. And the first thing we can do is we can adjust our exposure. If I can spell, there we go. And then secondly, we're going to go ahead and adjust our white balance. Okay, so exposure, usually because we're already, you can see we're clipped at 100% for our whites. I'm just going to take our gamma over here and just pull this down. So whenever I'm adjusting this, I'm just looking at skin tone to kind of get it pleasing where I want it. So probably right about there feels nice. And then we haven't crushed any black. So I feel like this looks really good. We can check our white balance. We're using the vector scope right here. And we can see that the skin tone indicator looks like these pinks are lining up pretty spot on. If anything, maybe just a hair more yellow, like right there. But other than that, it looks really good. So I'm not really going to touch it. I feel like it's pretty spot on. Nailed this shot. So after we've corrected the shot, and we have our conversion, then we can start using the creative look. So if I want to come over here to this clip, I'm just going to select both of those clips like this, come up and click this button here, and then use selected clips. That way I can kind of see them side by side and kind of get an idea of what I want to start grading. So we're going to come over. I don't want to select all of them. There we go. Come over to our shot here. And if we wanted to have the same look across everything, which is what we usually do, I would do that in a timeline level. But because we're also looking at these individual stills, it won't work because it's going to actually change both of that. So you can see here, if I go to my adjustment, it's going to change both of those. So I don't want that. So in that case, just for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and bypass the group post clip, and I'm going to add that on the individual basis right here. So we have this clip, exposure, white balance, and then our conversion. All right. And then after that, we're going to add our creative look. So we're just going to call this creative LUT right here. And as we're looking at this footage, I want something that's going to be pretty bold and then also has soft skin tones and some really dense saturation in it. So if I want this look, there's two different ways I could go about it. What's really unique about our base LUTs is we also make a bold version. So if you want your footage to pop pretty drastically, really, but also hold together really well, you can do that by selecting the bold version. So we're going to go back to that LUT on Sony, the S-Log3 to Rec 7.9, and we're going to choose the bold one. And immediately you can kind of see it really stands out a lot more. So there's the new one. So before and after, we get a lot more life into the shot. So that's probably a good base if we want to. And you can see all the greens are kind of already popping a lot more. So this could be an option we're going to do. And then on our creative LUT, we wouldn't have to be as intense because we already have a strong image. So let's go ahead and take a look at some LUTs. So in this case, as I'm looking at it, I might want to try something that's a little bit soft. So maybe let's go to the Emma K and then maybe the bold look. So we're just going to drag that over into this clip or double click when we're selected on the node. And that looks pretty strong. Let's go to bright. Just going to take a look at that. Soft looks really nice. And then warm. So I feel like soft would work if you're using the bold version, but let's go ahead and revert back to that other one. I just wanted to show you the bold option. And that way we can lean into these creative LUTs a little bit more. So now whenever I add bright, we're getting more of that green color, and then bold, we're getting that look. Let me just double check. I'm going to hover over this node. So yeah, it didn't change to the original. That's what I thought. I'm going to make sure I actually select that. All right. So now, okay. So also the creative LUTs as intended. So the bold version feels really nice. And let's go ahead and dial back and see what we're looking at. Okay. So I feel like this is kind of looking pretty good. Now to kind of get this look that you want, this really soft skin tone in a bright environment, I would want to use this other tool called Gamut Boost. Now this is a really fantastic tool, and we're going to select this LUT. I have this stored in our Gamut X and then Gamut Boost. This can also be tools. And this is just going to bring a lot more highlight retention to anything with clouds. It's going to take the edge off any strong skin tone, but it's also going to kind of saturate the image. So you don't need to be too intense on this one. We can change our key output probably to taste. Let's go to probably 30% on this. Just enough if we want to. All right, so we're having this look. It's starting to come together, but we're noticing the greens are a little bit more blue. So let's go back to our creative LUT, and let's take a look at, let's see a bright version. So here we have with the look, without the look. I feel like it needs to keep popping a little bit more. So the bold version is a little bit more on the warm side. So let's go ahead and try a different pack. Let's go over to Prestige. And let's try Timeless Elegance. There we go. Okay, so that one's going to be punchy a lot more. And then Wedding White, it's going to have those blue greens, which I think is starting to match a little bit closer to that look. So if we go ahead and select those shots, wow, it's looking a lot closer. We're having a little bit more contrast in this one, so we can go ahead and probably dial that back. But let's see Timeless. I'm going to try Timeless Elegance. And then Wedding White, kind of see which one I like. If you want those blue greens, Wedding White's going to do it more. This one feels a little bit more cohesive. So Timeless Elegance, I think I'm going to lean into that one. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and start looking at maybe adjusting the contrast or how intense the LUT is. So we can go ahead and dial back the creative LUT to taste if we want to. But we kind of want it to be a little bit strong. Honestly, I mean, 90% feels pretty spot on. But what we can do is at the end right here, we can add another curve if we want to. So let's take a look at this. We can just come over to our curves and we could just lift up the shadows. I'm going to use Option and click so I can kind of hold on that point and then maybe just lift up those shadows a little bit. And then if I pull down these highlights, it's going to smooth off the skin. So you can see, I'm just going to select this one right here. So you can see that whenever I'm playing with these curves, right here, it's kind of softening the skin a little bit, which is kind of nice. Before and after, kind of evening everything out. All right. And then if we want to, and we realize after we've already adjusted everything, and we want to make sure we might want a little bit more punch in the exposure, let's come back to our first node, and we could go ahead and just play with the lift or the gamma here or the midtones. All right, we could disable this back curve, and we can do it before if we want to, or you can do this after the look. It's kind of like more of a trim is kind of how I would label this. And this is just because you're tweaking after the creative look because you want a different intention. So this one, maybe we go ahead and just pull that back just a hair. All right, that's looking pretty good, honestly. So if we want our blacks to kind of come down a little bit more, let's go back and click on our lift. Just pull that down. All right, so then we just push play on this. And just look at some of the footage. And honestly, I feel like that looks really good. getting a really close look to this, honestly. So let's try another shot. Let's go over to one of these clips. Since we already worked on this, I can click Command C, copy and paste, but obviously our exposure and white balance need to be readjusted. I'm going to turn off my trim, and then maybe let's just start with our base LUT right here. All right, our exposure, I don't think we need to go down this strong, but let's definitely bring the skin tone down a bit. All right, this feels pretty good. And then I'm looking over on the vector scope. We have the skin tone indicator line. So for our white balance, I'm going to take my offset, just shift it over a little bit so it's a little bit closer to that line. And then I can pull it down if I want a little bit more in the blues and the shadows. But honestly, I feel like right here feels good. Yeah, looking nice. And then we can go over to our creative LUT. And so we can take a look at this. And honestly, I mean, this one looks really good. It's really strong though. So in this case, for this individual clip, we would probably want to pull down how intense the LUT is. But I mean, if you look at that, I feel like that looks really good. If we want more of a softer look, let's go to the MK and click soft. This one you could really crank if you needed to. Much better, but it's a little bit more warm, so maybe the bright one is going to look a little bit better. Let's just go all the way. There we go. And we have some mixed lighting. So some lighting that's coming inside the room and then some lighting outside. So you're getting a little bit of this pink and warmth on this side of the sheet. And then you also have the blue on the other side. One way that you could work to fix that is I would do after the base LUT. So I could do it here or I can do it before the base LUT. But I just want to do a secondary adjustment. And this is going to be just to fix that. So another tool is in the HTFW Lux pack. I have an interior LUT tool. Let's try this and see what that does. Yeah, and look at that. You can see the blue right here, and it just pulls that blue back. There's before, and there's after, before and after, and it's hardly touching the dress or hardly touching the skin at all. And this is just going to help with any mixed lighting. That's a really good tool to use. And honestly, I mean, this shot looks fantastic. So if we were to break down this shot and what we did, we started with our base LUT, okay? And then we needed to adjust our exposure. Once our exposure is dialed in, we needed to tweak white balance. Then we can get creative. We added our creative LUT of choice. After we did that, we could tell that, okay, we need to go ahead and do an adjustment, like a secondary adjustment to really clean that up. And we added our secondary adjustment. And then if you wanted to, you could add Gamut Boost, but I feel like we don't really need that in this shot. So I kind of leave that off. So ultimately, that's a really good look right there. Let's go back to this clip, Command Paste and copy right here. I mean, now these work really well together. We're still getting some nice yellows in the trees, so I feel like that looks really good. If we want to get a little bit more of those bluer greens to kind of match that other shot, let's go back to Prestige and then let's lean in a Wedding White. There we go. Yeah, so that's looking really good. Let's add that Gamut Boost. Let's just crank the Gamut Boost more and see what's happening. All right, so 0.7, so 70%. Maybe we don't need that trim. The trim kind of evens it out a little bit. And we can kind of just look at before and after. So this one, let me just take a look at this one clip. So you can see that this one is actually the white balance. I mean, it's a lower quality shot, so there's going to be having some pixel issues, but leaning a lot more yellow than it is red. So I would say this, I don't want to correct my colors to look too orange. So again, that could be just the lower quality of this clip. But here it looks a little bit more aligned. But if I'm using this one as a reference, I just need to keep that in mind. And then when I'm going to this clip, I really want to focus on the skin tones kind of being lined up. Now, it does look a little heavy, and that's because we're pushing all these colors with Gamut Boost, and so it's increasing the reds in the skin tone. So we might want to do a secondary adjustment after that if we like the overall look, but it's just a little too strong. Or we can go ahead and if you go back to your exposure and lift up your gamma, that will kind of even it out a little bit. So I think that looks pretty good. And then if you wanted to add that contrast, you could pull down your lift and then go back up and finesse the gamma again. So I feel like that looks pretty great. We have these two shots looking solid. Again, a little bit more even, so maybe not that Gamut Boost. Maybe the Gamut Boost is a little too much. Well, actually, let's just go down with the intensity. I would say right there feels really good. So probably 50% on Gamut Boost. I like that. The image is looking really great. Maybe we do a little bit more on that exposure adjustment before, since we're in that wider color space still before the base LUT. We're in S-Log3, and we can go ahead and just kind of, let me pull down maybe the gain a little bit. Let's see that. Just kind of soften it. I think that's looking pretty good. If we need to do an adjustment just to target the skin tone, we could do it this way and come over to our slice tool. This is more of the reds, so I could just pull down the reds right here just so they're not as intense, but I feel like that's fairly close. Yeah, so just touching it up a little bit before and after, so it's a little bit more clean. But ultimately, I probably, in the Creative LUT, I would go to, let's try Emma K, and then we can go back to our bold look here. I'm just going to select this one clip. We have bold, bright, soft, and warm. All these look really good, but I feel like, as we were discussing, Prestige Wedding White's probably going to be the one that gets closer to this look that we're noticing. And they fit really well together, honestly. And the footage, I mean, really pops. So that's really looking good. All those colors are coming through nicely. And then I'm just going to Command copy these two, paste into these clips. Oh, that looks so good. So then the adjustment right there looks fantastic. And again, it's that secondary that's just pulling out that mixed lighting here before and after. So you have a little bit of warmth and you have a little bit of blue, and it's just kind of squeezing that together and creating more pure whites. So it's reducing any kind of color tint or cast near white or bright levels. So you do need to be careful, but overall, I feel like it's looking pretty good if you want to draw your attention more to skin before and after. Even after still looks fine, I think. It doesn't really need it, because I think it's a good color contrast. But that's how I would approach that shot. So, but overall, I feel like we did a pretty good job taking a shot, looking at it, identifying what works and how to kind of recreate those colors, and then picking the right creative LUT, making sure that we're adjusting our exposure before the base LUT. So in this case, because the camera's filming a lot brighter than you needed to, I would kind of bring the exposure down, because we lost some information in these highlights that we could have retained if we had brought the exposure down in camera. So you can see that, let me just disable all that, just the base LUT. You can see we're right at 100, so we're clipping, and we can expose darker. So next time I'd say expose the camera darker. For Sony S-Log3, you don't need to overexpose, and then you're going to get a great working image. But if you don't, just adjust it before, making sure your white balance is set, adding the base LUT, then adding the creative LUT of choice. Once you get close, change the intensity of it, how you want that to look. And then if you need to add a little bit more of a pop or a little bit more highlight retention, and you want everything to kind of mix really well, Gamut Boost is a great option. And then you can do a final trim or any kind of texture-based adjustments to the clip to get a good working result. So hopefully this was helpful on how to kind of get that pastel look. And thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next video.